All right, beautiful people. Welcome back to another amazing and impactful episode of the True Health Forever podcast, where we try to live our best life through the lens of holistic health. I'm your humble host, De'Von Truvel, creator of Black Wall Street, the board game. I'm sorry if y'all can already sense, I'm sure, in the frequencies and the energy if you're listening on the podcast, that the queen is not here for this episode. But nonetheless, y'all know every time we will still make it happen each and every week. So today on the podcast, y'all got me. I'm gonna try to keep it nice, short, and concise. But interesting enough, it feels like whenever we try to keep it concise, it doesn't happen. But I will try to do it this time. Before we get into it, this was a pretty good week. I'll do a short kind of intro or a short talk about how the week was. Beautiful. We did have the honor and privilege of going up to Reno, Nevada to be able to support our grandma turning 75 years old. All right. It's not often that, folks within our community are able to reach, 75, 85, 95, 100 years old and just have all of that cultural knowledge and experience. And be able to share that with the family is definitely beautiful, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to reach the age 75, 85, 95 and just have all of that experience and wisdom to pass down to my future generation, my future kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and all that stuff. So it was a great and powerful weekend with the family. We had the first annual Wilson Walker Olympics where we played, like pool, foosball, table tennis. I forgot what it's called, but it's where it's a piece of wood and you're throwing like hockey pucks kind of over sand, shuffleboard or something like that. And then we ended it with a cool game of team Texas Hold'em. So it was just a pretty fun, action-packed weekend and had some great conversation, which did spark today's episode topic, which I'll get into in a second. First, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the Black Business School team. Shout out to Lawrence Watkins and Boyce Watkins and Chanel for hooking it up with the interview to begin with. Had the opportunity of going on the Black Business School platform and get interviewed by Lawrence Watkins and really talk about what we've been able to do with Black Wall Street, the board game, what we've been able to do with Play Black Wall Street Academy, and what the Queen is doing with her health. So it was a dope interview. Definitely go check that out on YouTube. You can search for Tulsa's Black Wall Street game, and it should be one of the first ones that pop up with the Black Business School. Go ahead and check that out. Like and leave a comment just to give some more energy, so that we can get more interviews like that. Because again, it was a dope experience. For those that don't know, Boyce Watkins, Lawrence Watkins are pretty well-known economists in their individual own right. They are biological brothers, but on their own right, they have their own legacy and vision and skills that they bring to the table. So when you talk about, Black economics, when you talk about Black entrepreneurship and folks that are out in the community really trying to make sure our community has the information and knowledge we need to get economic power, those are two names that definitely come up. So definitely check them out and support. But for today's episode, we are talking about the 5 questions you should ask your elders before they pass on to greater glory. Okay, so again, elders, when we think about, ancestors, when we think about this, folks who have experience and wisdom, who have lived a life before us on this planet, you want to make sure you get some information and get some knowledge from them. There's definitely plenty of knowledge to learn from listening to podcasts. There's great knowledge to learn from listening to YouTube videos. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. True Health Forever. We appreciate it. Reading books, obviously going to college. But there's something, to me personally, something more personal and intimate to learn about history, to learn about sociology, to learn about economics, and just learn about experiences from your family, because those experiences, whether you believe them or not, are going to be, or whether you believe it or not, are ingrained in who you are as well. Experiences are encoded in our DNA. So the experiences that some grandparents went through, your parents, your uncles, may have been passed on to you and you don't even know. So I think there's cool things to learn from talking to elders and really getting their insights on some things. So again, today we're going to go over 5 quick questions and maybe a few sub questions to ask your elders in order to get deeper insight. Let's get into the episode. All right, so I have 5 questions and a bonus question, and they're in no particular order, but I don't know if I want to necessarily start with like the heavy hitter first, but I think I'm just going to do it because I'm just going to read in order, that way I don't rant and fumble around too much. So the first one that I think is pretty important just to understand is ask your elders, what was the civil rights or the social justice fight of their generation? I feel like that is just important information to know because and the follow-up question is, did they win the fight? Right? So we look in the 60s, they were really fighting for equity and the right to vote and for economic power. When we look at the 70s and the 80s, we're fighting for equity, we're fighting for equality and maybe social justice in the prison reform complex. When we look at the 2000s, 90s, and even today, we're looking for equity, we're looking for economic power and the halt of police brutality and the cease of the prison industrial complex as a whole. So it's interesting to me when I look at history that it seems like we're fighting very similar fights each and every generation. But I know that if we ask, the older generation, if I ask my grandma, which I have, she says the right was for equality and to have the same opportunities that other communities, specifically the white communities, had. And in her opinion, we have won that fight. And I think there is some truth to that because when we look at the access to being able to go to schools, there's that equal access, right? When we look at the access to be able to apply for jobs, to be able to go to restaurants and patronize businesses as customers, we have equal rights to do all those things. But do we have the equity that we need is the secondary question. But surface level, or not really surface level, but I would say you want to ask your parents, or parents, grandparents, what was the social justice or civil rights fight of your time, of your generation, and did they feel like they won that fight? And I'll be interested to know. You look at even the LGBTQIA community, when we look at their fight for equal marriage or the right to have a domestic relationship, that was a fight that was won, but I'm sure there's other fights that they weren't able to win during that time period. So go ahead and ask them that question. Now, a lighter question that maybe you want to start off with before you just dive deep into the social justice realm is, what did your parents' parents do for money? Or whoever you're asking, like if you're asking your grandparents, it's like, what did your parents do to provide for the family? What I find interesting is knowing about the different professions that are within your lineage. I've found out recently that my biological mom's mom was an entrepreneur. And I never knew, I kind of knew she was an entrepreneur. I knew Nana Faye was an entrepreneur in real estate, here, but I didn't necessarily know that she was a entrepreneur and starting businesses when she was on the island of Jamaica. I feel like that's cool to know, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I get a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit from that side of the family. Also the mom that raised me, entrepreneur, right? So it's like, I know I get entrepreneurial stuff from various sides, but it's interesting to be able to fully embrace it now that I have this different information. It was also interesting to learn, talking to Sinclair's Nana, and I wish Sinclair was here to be able to give y'all this firsthand stuff, but just learning a little bit about, the style and the swag that her grandfather had, and to know about just the real strength and resilience that her grandmother had growing up in the different businesses and things that she had to go through as well. It gives you a deeper sense of identity. For me personally, it gives me a deeper sense of identity to learn about what my parents did for money, what were some of their talents and gifts that they had. My grandma on my dad's side wrote a whole entire book, right? And her sister also wrote an entire book. And y'all know that's one of my things that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get into writing books, comic books, novels. So it gives me extra confidence going into it. Like, oh no, I come from a long lineage of authors and orators that wrote the stories of, all that good stuff. So I would encourage you to just, ask, what did your parents do to provide for the family? And then maybe a secondary question is, what were some hidden talents that your parents or your parents' parents had while they were growing up? Both of them, I think, can pour into your own cup and help you learn about who you are, who you will be as a person as well. All right, number 3, I told y'all I'm going to try to make this a quick one for you. I'm going to try. Definitely, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that stuff, go ahead and give us a like and follow the podcast. It really does help us out a lot. And if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, True Health, the number 4 ever, and we appreciate you. All right, number 3. And this one's a fun one. All right, and y'all know I'm a foodie. Y'all know the queen is a foodie. So I would ask personally, what was your favorite meal growing up? And I think this question is going to have levels to it. It's going to have layers to it. But I would ask your grandma, your grandpa, your uncle, your parents, when you were growing up, what was your favorite meal? I think segments that I'm trying to get out of that question is, one, what was the food that you were eating, right? Were you eating the typical cultural food of whatever identity you associate with? Did you have a chef in the family? Like, again, one of my moms that raised me, her dad was a professional chef. So the food that she was eating was like chicken piccata and like fancy bougie stuff like that. So when I was in the household and she was making these things, I feel like I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have as a kid, getting this fancy stuff, because I was like, I just want the chicken nuggets. I just want McDonald's. I just want the tacos. But she was trying to give me the extra culture that she was given as a kid as well. So I think now, looking back at it, I'm able to appreciate a little bit more, knowing that's how she grew up, that's her culture, that's her experience, and she's trying to gift that experience to her kids as well. Secondly, you get to know who in the household was doing the cooking, or did no one cook. And I think it gives you an interesting insight into the household dynamics of your parents or of your parents' parents. I know, like, when we look at the typical household, the wife or the feminine figure is doing the cooking. But again, I just told y'all, like, my mom's dad was a professional chef, so it makes sense logically for him to do the cooking instead of someone else, because he's probably better at cooking because that's what he does. He chefs it up all day. When we look at, myself and the queen, she does most of the cooking because she's better at doing the cooking. If she's, tired, doesn't feel like doing it, or if it's going to be an easy night, I'll go ahead and do the cooking. I chef up from now and again, but I'm definitely not messing with the queen. Do not tell her I said that. I repeat, if you are listening to this, do not tell Sinclair that I said she was a better chef. She will not let me live it down. Cool, moving on. Thirdly, within that same question, it lets you know a little bit into the nutrition of your parents growing up. And again, I try to get my parents to, be pescatarian, which my mom kind of has. My dad has recently given up red meat, although he may have slid back. But for a second, he did give up red meat. My grandma, for a second while I was living in her house, she gave up pork. So it's cool to be able to influence, how your parents and older generations eat and take care of their health. But at the same time, I think as younger folks, we get frustrated when our parents don't listen to our advice, and we think, oh, I read these articles, I listened to this podcast, and they said this about red meat, so you should cut out red meat. But you have to understand, they may have been eating red meat since they were like 6 years old, and now they're 50 something years old. So that's 50 or a solid 40 years of traditions in life that they're accustomed to, that now you as myself, 27 years old, you're trying to shift their tradition, their way of life that they've only known maybe since they're 6. So it's interesting to be able to know what were you eating growing up. Were you eating the salami? Were you eating spam? Were you eating sushi? Were you eating chicken piccata? Were you eating soul food and chitlins and all that stuff? Just to influence, again, either the information that you try to give them or just to know a little bit more about your own culture and where you come from.